Good day, everyone, from whichever time zone you may be joining us. It is a real pleasure to welcome you to this webinar, the GSMA Mobile Money API Specification, Technology Unlocking Financial Services. Hosted by the GSMA Mobile Money Program's Inclusive Tech Lab, this webinar, we will aim to share with you how APIs, and specifically the GSMA Mobile Money API, can unlock financial services in mobile money markets to their full potential. Mobile money continues to grow exponentially across developing markets. The seamless integration of service providers and mobile money platforms is key to providing underserved people with wider access to critical products. And by providing easily accessible APIs, operators can create almost endless opportunities to build additional services on top of mobile money, as well as create opportunities to monetize those services. As the GSMA's Mobile Money Program, we aim to offer the industry with forefront research and guidance on technological best practices to support operators to move towards a platform operating model, one of the core facets of the GSMA's vision for the future of mobile money. The GSMA Mobile Money API specifically is an initiative developed through collaboration between the mobile money industry and the GSMA. It was created to support the mobile money industry speak the same technical language by providing a modern, harmonized API for mobile money transactions and management that is both easy to use and secure. The GSMA Harmonized API initiative aims to increase adoption of the mobile money API through dedicated engagement with mobile money providers and wider industry players, and support ecosystem vendors. So, in today's webinar, our goal is to give you an actionable introduction to the GSMA Mobile Money API specification and provide you with an overview of the specification itself and how to implement the specification in order to build meaningful API-based product proposition. We will also give you an overview of the suite of developer assets and tooling that we've made available in support of adopters that like to get started to develop their solutions. And last, we will explain how to ensure solutions you build are compliant with the specification and how you can receive an official GSMA compliance mark. My name is Bart-Jan. I'm Senior Director, Mobile Money and Inclusive FinTech at the GSMA. And I'm the host of today's webinar, together with my co-host, Eugis. Eugis, welcome.
Thank you, Bart-Jan. I'm Eudisley Anjos and the Senior Engineer Manager of the Inclusive Tech Lab. It is a pleasure to be here today to talk about this important project that we have.
Thank you, Aegis. But before we get started in the topic of today, I'd like to spend a minute or two to inform you about the GSMA Mobile Money Program's activities. This webinar is presented to you by the GSMA Inclusive Tech Lab, the research and innovation lab embedded in the Mobile Money Program at the GSMA. The lab takes a hands-on approach to research, test, and also develop the inclusive technologies of the future. So jointly with industry stakeholders, players from the industry, the lab strategizes, builds, and also pilots solutions, and disseminates the findings and insights, as well as the assets to the wider industry for their benefit. So we do this through a threefold of activities. One is that we develop together with industry players innovation projects, meaning that we define and ideate and prototype solutions that have an horizon of a couple of years from now, showing where the industry is moving, and really test these out together with industry players in their markets. And we can do that in terms of proofs of concepts, or go all the way full-blown into launching these solutions in market together with our partners. Second to that, we do that through technology-focused research. So really evaluating and validating existing and upcoming technologies and standards that are relevant for the future of the industry, aiming to provide thought leadership to the markets. And third, we develop technological assets that are widely available for the industry to use. Based on the business needs that we collect from industry players, we conceptualize ideas and build solutions that we make available, be it specifications, test environments, software packages, SDKs, and so on. All of that in order to support the industry, and all of that made available open source. So we've working with an ideation, exploration, industry pilot, and dissemination framework, all in support of the industry to drive inclusive innovations. And ultimately, the objective of the GSMA Inclusive Tech Lab is to drive inclusive innovations in mobile money at scale, jointly with our industry partners, impacting the lives of millions of people. So since the birth of the lab 3 years ago, we've reached, with our solutions, through our partners, 10.5 million people. And we've delivered a suite of knowledge products to the industry on a variety of technological subjects through reports, blogs, webinars like today, and so forth. And very importantly, we help the industry to develop solutions and open source technologies, and also support the implementation of these technologies. For instance, and quite relevant to the subject of today, the support to providers of the mobile money API specification. That said, let's get closer to the subject of today, but not before giving a brief overview on the state of the industry when it comes to mobile money, because that's a stepping stone for us to present why APIs, and specifically the mobile money API of the GSMA, is relevant for the industry. Over the past decade, the mobile money industry has seen a tremendous growth across Africa, Asia, and also Latin America. And as such, indisputably, I would argue, mobile money has become the main enabler in low and middle income countries for financial inclusion. To date, the numbers are impressive, as also reported in our annual GSMA State of the Industry report on mobile money, which this infographic shows some highlight key figures of. For instance, reaching well over 1 billion registered mobile money accounts, maybe even more impressive is the fact that over 500 million people in the world, in the global south, are active users of mobile money solutions. And the industry at large is transacting a staggering $1 trillion on an annual basis. So I'll leave these numbers for you to digest. But what I would like to extract from this is that the mobile money industry over the past years has clearly been moving from a business model that was based on more traditional use cases like cash in and cash out and peer-to-peer transactions to use cases that are more advanced and reflect a platform-based approach of the industry. And also that includes the enabling of other industry players to connect and leverage mobile money services. So building an interconnected and interoperable ecosystem in which mobile money providers and the wider tech players in their surroundings can build joint propositions and deliver value to customers. And that's also reflected in the numbers, where the original use cases have been driving the advent of the industry, cash in, cash out, and peer-to-peer transactions. And the amount of money flowing in and out of the system are reducing in size compared to the total value going around in the industry. So cash in and cash outflows nowadays amount for around 42% of the total of movements in money in the industry. That means that 68% is flows that stay within the digitized mobile money industries, giving rise to a variety of different use cases in the space of merchant payments, bill payments, disbursements, salary payments, and so on and so forth. And some of these use cases we will definitely look at in closer detail in today's webinar. What is important to say, however, at this stage, is that as this ecosystem is connecting and building joint solutions, and third parties can plug into mobile money platforms to develop their solutions for their joint customers. API-based mobile money propositions are presenting a huge opportunity for that ecosystem to grow forward and also pave a way to unlock new revenue streams for mobile money providers. So building an interconnected system and allowing that connectivity between players by development of API-based business propositions enables growth and enables new monetization streams. It enables reach, so expanding the business and brand presence while increasing user engagement. It enables new customer acquisitions. There is an opportunity to grow revenue by acquiring new customers and reaching financially included people. It also enables to untap access to new industry verticals, so fostering partnerships with new third-party industry players that are one by one plugging into the ecosystem. Having that open API proposition towards ecosystem players also enables to develop new products and new services. So driving innovation by creating new products, services, and use cases for the growing ecosystem. And last but certainly not least, enabling API-based interconnectivity between ecosystem players enables new monetization streams, earning revenue through the existing and new use cases being adopted by newly connected industry verticals. So with that said, as this first introduction, I think it's high time to have a closer look at APIs and specifically the GSMA Mobile Money API Specification, which we have developed in support of the industry. And at that stage, I would be glad to hand over to Eudisley to take over from here.
Thank you, Bart. Again, it's a pleasure that we can go deeper into our mobile money API specification. And at this moment, I will go deeper in the technical aspects, but also in the business value that this API brings to the mobile money industry. So to start talking about our specification, I would like to make a clear distinction between the API specification that we create at GSMA and the API definition or the API implementation that most of the service providers and mobile operators, mobile money operators, they create themselves. So what our proposition with this specification is to bring to the industry a broader understanding of what the mobile money specification can support, what kind of APIs can be built to support the mobile money services. So this specification contains instructions or guidelines about how to design your own API, how this API should behave and links to another APIs, how the communication between APIs that follow the same specification should have, and also what to expect when you are deploying your API that is compliant with our API specification. On the other side, the API definition or the API implementation is the real code, is the functional piece of code that will be created to provide the access to the systems that the mobile operators have with the mobile money solutions. So the definition, the API definition or the API implementation is made to the end user developers that will directly connect to the endpoints of those systems and have access to the financial services. So what we want to bring with this specification is to help the industry with this broader understand and also provide more interoperability among those players that are following and implementing APIs according to our specification. Said that, let's go a little bit deeper into our specification and what it contains. The GSMA Mobile Money API specification is today in the version 1.2 that is fully functional. This version contains 8 use cases that are view payments, agent services, merchant payments, disbursements, international transfers, P2P transfers, recurring payments, and account linking. Every one of these use cases comply different kinds of scenarios that could be used into the daily kind of mobile money transactions. So all these 8 use cases contains over 500 scenarios. that are present in our specification. So this specification is done principally to provide, as Bart mentioned before, more harmonization among the industry, and then also support the collaboration between different industry players. But also, at the moment that we can follow a specification to the industry, we can reduce the complexity when we are creating new systems, new solutions, but also when we are using current solutions for the mobile money industry. And also, this will help to reduce the fragmentation that we have when different players build different APIs without be following the same guidelines or the same specification. Another good advantage that the specification brings to the industry is the fact that once you have this specification as a guide, as a path to follow during the development, it will reduce the time to create new solutions, but also the cost and the time to market for new integrations and deployment of systems, or also when you want or you need to shift your business to work with different providers, service providers. Then the API will be essential to reduce the time, but also the development time, but also to integrate easily these different solutions. So the specification helps directly to advance the industry capability. As mentioned before by Bart, what we want to provide as mobile money team is provide inclusion. Then this mobile money API specification was all designed thinking about how to reach a bank, how to reach new users, new customers that need different kinds of mobile money services. So the main purpose or the main goal of this project for GSMA is that we can provide innovation to the entire mobile money ecosystem, but thinking about inclusion and also bring the latest kinds of technologies and solutions into the market. So the main advantage, as mentioned before, of having a harmonized API is that we can easily support and maintain the solutions that we have market. And that is one of our roles as GSMA, is to support directly the mobile operators, the service providers, or any partner that is interested in creating solutions for the mobile money industry. So it's easier when you have a guide, when you have something to follow, like our specification. Also, as mentioned, it's much quicker if you have that already set for you. And that's what we want to provide to you as a service provider or as an API consumer. We want to make it quicker for you to understand. And that's why further during this presentation, I share with you some toolings that we also created to help the developers to quickly adapt and create solutions. Also, the unharmonized API will make the onboarding of new partners much easier and quicker in terms of once we have the entire industry following the same specification, the same a service provider can deploy or can shift the same solution to different providers or different operators much easier than one day we have a fragmented market. And the third one is innovation. So this API specification provides innovation to our industry. We try to group the main interests of the mobile operators, the service providers, all the industry needs, and we compile that into one specification to help, to support, and also to be directly connected to the code and the technologies created to this market. So you raise more aware to the industry, but we also support with the technological side of this specification and the API's development. And what are we providing here as an API specification? So as GSMA, we support directly the API adopters, and that goes inside the entire ecosystem that use mobile money solutions. So we are talking about mobile operators, but also API consumers, service providers, anyone who is creating solutions for the mobile money industry could be supported by us with those solutions in our specification. And that's the main goal, that we are making this specification global and available to everyone and everywhere, is to support with any adopter. Also, we can support with gap analysis, understanding what your API currently has, what we can improve or shift the current APIs to be under the specification and be compliant with GSMA. As I mentioned, we give the support about the specification and how it works, but also we have engineers, myself included, that could give you a technical support to solve bottlenecks or to direct you to the best practices in terms of API and the API specification into the mobile money industry. We also have a compliance verification program that will be more detailed further during this presentation, where you, when you use our specification, we're adopting the solutions or the API specification guidelines that we provide, you can also receive a stamp from GSMA after verifying all the connections or all the compliance with our API specification. Also, we can provide the support with the engagement into the ecosystem. We have an engagement team that is working with us and with you to connect, to provide more networking among the industry and among the partners that are adopting the API specification. And to provide that, we have joining marketings, we have working groups, meetings that bring the industry together, not just to engage and support with API specification, but also to define the guidelines for the evolution of this API and for the mobile money industry as a whole. And again, the developer outreach and events like hackathons or meetings like the working groups that we have with the industry that can bring these needs together, brings different solutions together, and we can evolve as a whole community. So this is just the top of the iceberg of what we can provide with the API specification. In our solution, if you would like to see what you have available and how you could use this solution, we have online and open API specification. As mentioned before, we have over 500 different scenarios that you can adopt. They are part of 8 different use cases. And if you desire, if you want to begin to work with our solution, the first point that you have to do is to think and create your end user solutions. Think what kind of solutions for the mobile money industry you want to deploy, you need to bring alive. And then the second moment is when you create the API to make these services, these financial services available. And that's the point where we can help you with our solution. At the moment of the creation of this API, you can follow our specification, and then you have an API. And at the moment that you are compliant, you get also the stamp from GSMA telling you that the API that you created is compliant with our specification. So that's the direct support that we can give you and make your services, your financial services, compliant with our specification, but also more interoperable and easier to be deployed in different markets, different scenarios, and connect with different providers. The next question that you could ask is, where should I start? Where can I learn more about this amazing solution that you are presenting today? Well, we have different kinds of material available for you. So if you are more into the business level of understanding of the specification, we have blogs, we have reports, but we have also a page in our developers portal that drives you to the business behind the API specification. So the business page, you see different scenarios, daily scenarios, situations, and where the user needs to use mobile money services, and how our use cases, how are the different scenarios, the over 500 that I mentioned before, how they are directly connected to the daily needs, customer needs. So that is the business information that you can get, and you can directly connect these business needs with the specification and what we provide to you. But if you are more engineer development level like me, we have lots of material for you available. We have different kinds of documentation, starting from diagram and flow diagrams until specific documentations of the codes and YAML files and API definitions that we created. So we have a developer portal that can provide that for you. You can start by the API documentation, understanding more what the specification is, what it contains in a high level. And after that, you can go deeper and deeper, understanding more how it works, but also starting to create solutions and test our API and API specification. You can also find tooling support. As Bart mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we have SDKs, we have code snippets, and all the material that you make your development easier and you support you during this development process. So this material that I mentioned, you can get all of that by our developers portal. So once you access the portal, you see testimonials about other operators and merchants that are currently using the solution, or real situations where the specification and the API could be useful. But also, as I mentioned, you have use case diagrams that you can see the flow that the specification for each use case and scenario use. You can see the kind of information that goes from one entity into the communication process to another, so you can understand better the API usage. But also you have toolings like SDKs and code snippets that you facilitate your implementation. Currently, we have these SDKs and code snippets in 5 different programming languages that are PHP, Java, Android, Node.js, and JavaScript. So you can access these SDKs and directly, easily implement the solutions with this tooling, with this support that we are giving to you. Also, if you are an operator and you would like to provide SDKs or adapt your API to be compliant with our solutions, all this tooling, they will be easily adaptable to your solution. And that is the main advantage of using the same specification that we mentioned before, is that all these kind of solutions that we create to the entire industry, they are much more, they are easier to be adapted and converted from one API to another. Also, in the API guidelines and the information, you can see more information about security and how you can implement with best practices in the market, but also with the code development and how you can guarantee security for your solutions. At the developers portal, also you can create a login, and you have the API keys that you would need to test these solutions available, the simulator that we have available. So once you get the login, you can create API keys to have access to authorization and authentication when trying and testing your solutions. To provide you a better environment to testing the API, we also provide an API simulator. So this API simulator was created following our specification, of course, and it is deployed in a AWS cloud server on our premises, and you can test the different versions of our API specification. We have the simulator for the current version, that is the 1.2 for sure, but you can also, if you are working with the previous versions of the specification, like 1.0 or 1.1, you can also test that against our simulator. We have available a database that contains some dummy data that you can test with fixed and variable values, the solutions that we are creating. You can also get the better definition of specific use cases and test cases that you want to test against the simulator over our developers portal, including some YAML files that will help you with this testing. And also we have an entire Postman collection with different examples containing request and response cases that you can test against our API simulator. So I think that you have different environments are available for you to test the solution. So you can start with the Postman, then you can create the API keys over the dev portal to test different solutions. And at the end, once you are evolving your solution, you can also test your own API against our compliance platform. And the final would be to get the stamp from GSMA telling that you are compliant to one or two or multiple different use cases. So to test the system, you could start as sorry, I mentioned that already, but you could start with the Postman, and once you are testing on Postman, you can go deeper to the development of your solution and test that directly against the simulator using your own environment. And at the final stage would be when you start to produce or to create your own solution using our SDKs and code snippets to the development of new services. Well, once you understand a little bit more about our API specification, as I mentioned, this is just the top of this project. There are lots of things going on at the same time. But one of the most important points for the operators is that they guarantee that they are following all the guidelines that we provide in the specification. And to make that much more simple, we have a platform that's our mobile money API compliance verification service. And I would like to pass the ball back to you, Bart, so you can talk a little bit more about the platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eudis, and great to see all those highlights on what's inside the initiative, what's inside the spec, and what suite of products, services, and tooling we provide to adopters of the specification. Before I get into the compliance verification service, I would just like to give a cue to the audience as well. I can imagine that during the talk, you may have lots of questions. If you have those, please do feel free to pop them into the comments window. We will leave substantial time in this webinar to take your questions in a Q&A round at the end of our presentation. So if you would like to pose any questions or get deeper into detail of some of the materials that are being presented, please do take the little effort, write them down in the chat window, and we'll take them up towards the end of the call. Getting back to where Eugis left it, finalizing on the stage of testing your implementation. There is a particular type of service that we have launched in the past year in order to facilitate implementing, in order to support adopters of the specification. So early in the year, we launched the GSMA Mobile Money API Compliance Verification Service. Now, this compliance verification service is designed to support mobile money providers and third-party service providers equally well who wish to comply with the harmonized industry specification on best practice in design and on security. So at the end of the line, it grants a GSMA Mobile Money API compliant mark to API providers that demonstrate compliance with this industry specification. So compliance is determined by establishing that an API provider has implemented the API for those use cases which are relevant to their business, and they've met the baseline security conformance for operational and API security. So this service is in essence a quality assurance service which aims to reduce the complexities associated with scaling API integrations in the growing mobile money market. And it aims to tackle also fragmentation of solutions in the industry by supporting that harmonization between provider solutions. So the service is free of charge for companies providing mobile money services, and it is intended to support the growth of a trusted mobile money ecosystem in developing countries. So earlier in the year, we've launched this service brand new, and we've been very pleased to do that jointly with our partners, Efracel, Conviva, and Sasai, who were the first companies to receive the GSMA compliance mark. So the question you may ask yourself is actually, why compliance? If I take the specification and build my solution according to it, isn't that sufficient? Well, in principle, it is, of course, because the specification is open source and freely available for anyone to make use to their needs. So there's a couple of arguments why we've launched this service. The first one being that it is a support service by the GSMA to provide support to adopters of the specification, helping them with guidance and advice on how to build their solutions against the spec. Secondly, also, it's great to have your solution, but it's even greater to know formally that your solution is actually following the specification correctly. So it really gives you that trust and validation that your implementation is correct and completely compliant. And third, I would say that also means that once you demonstrate that compliance, you get the formal GSMA compliance mark, which you can use towards your partners as a show of reliability of your solution. And the service is available for all use cases covered within the specification and for all versions of that specification, should you still be running on a legacy or an earlier version of the specification. So in terms of benefits, the compliance service really enables you to validate that you are compliant with technology and industry best practices and standards. In terms of how you build your API, in terms of how you build your security, and so on and so forth, all those components are covered under this compliance verification service. Very important, of course, as a benefit, once you are compliant, that means that you're enabled to accelerate third-party integrations. If we as an industry all speak the same language, that makes the ecosystem as a whole so much more efficient in terms of building partnerships and connecting on a technical level. Third, also as a benefit, as the GSMA, we support our industry with technology, but we also support our industry with advocacy efforts and the marketing benefits that come from building the solution and showing that compliance. And as I mentioned already, the service costs are incurred by the GSMA, so this service is offered to you free of charge. So who can actually apply for this compliance service? Well, the answer is quite straightforward if you think about what it applies to. It is basically accessible for any company, any organization that provides APIs according to the specification. You don't even have to implement the specification as a whole, because the compliance mark will be granted on a per use case basis. So whichever use case is of relevance to you, you may implement it if you provide APIs to the industry. So as an API provider. So that means that the service is accessible for, of course, mobile money operators, who are ultimately the customer-facing entities providing the services. But it's equally well possible for technology providers to apply and receive the compliance mark for their platforms that maybe those final mobile money services are running on top of. And also in the case of service providers, so you may not have a full-blown mobile money service, but you have your own service in whichever space that may be, in the remittances space or bill payment space or whatever it may be, and you would like to provide open APIs or closed APIs to your ecosystem around you that are compliant with the specification, you can equally well apply for this service and be granted compliance. So basically, the message here, it's all about interoperability. The specification aims to facilitate technical integration between ecosystem players, all speaking the same technical language according to a harmonized API. And the second keyword also to bring here is portability, because that means that if you've integrated with a mobile money API compliant entity, and you then elect to integrate with another entity that speaks that same API definition, that means that your solution is largely portable because the development has already been taking place. So that really drives an ecosystem that is interoperable and drives portability so that services can be quickly adopted to different providers. So in terms of the process, it's important to mention again that the compliance mark is given on a per use case basis. The GSMA Mobile Money API is a comprehensive API specification that covers the most important use cases from across the mobile money industry. That means that as an implementer, you may not always have a business interest to implement the full wide scope of the specification, but maybe focus on specific use cases covered within the specification. Think about being interested in international remittances, but maybe not yet in bill payments. That is absolutely possible because the compliance is granted to you on a per use case basis. Second, the service to really validate, to verify your compliance, we've made as much as possible self-serve. That is, the GSMA is always here to support you in your implementation process with guidance and advice. But we want to make sure that this service is ready to go and you can use it against your own timelines and your own availability. So as much as possible, a self-serve service that we made available to the industry. And of course, as a prerequisite before you can get into the compliance, that means that you have to have a solution in place, a working solution. And Eugis, prior to this part of the presentation, has already outlined what type of tooling and services we have available to support you into that implementation. But once you feel that you have a working solution that is maybe not fully following the specification in all details yet, but you're largely there, then you're ready to apply for this service. So we've defined a process that comes in 5 steps, all run through our compliance verification portal, which is the central platform that will help you to run through this entire process. So the first step in this process is the application. As part of the application, we will help you to go through a questionnaire that helps to define exactly the parameters of your system. So there's a component of security in there, which we will take to assess that also the security implementation of your solution is meeting best practice and industry standards. As well as that it helps to take in the actual scope of your implementation, for instance, which use case you're applying for, and what are the particular parameters and components of that use case that you are implementing. So it helps to test against what scope is required and mandatory within the compliance verification, and also what scope can be added based on how you've built the solution. Second to that, after the implementation on the compliance portal, we allow you with a test environment. This is a plug-and-play free environment in which you can test your solution the way you please. You can build your own scenarios. You can test as many times as you want. You can get all sorts of feedback on your implementation with detailed error messaging that helps you find and track errors and fix the issues that you may have encountered. It's a playground for you to start feeling comfortable and do an auto-assessment whether you're ready for this. So that takes us to the third step, which is the submission. The moment that you feel that your solution is ready, you can go into compliance mode on the platform. And that compliance mode generates, based on the questionnaire that you filled out, a tailor-made set of use cases and test cases that you would have to show compliance to. And it guides your way through that process. So it's a formal version of what was informally made available in the test window, in the compliance window, in the compliance mode. You really run through the formal validation. And once you pass that stage, you press submit. And that means your submission is forwarded towards the GSMA. And that leads us to the fourth stage, validation, in which the GSMA takes your submission, and really does a thorough analysis of your results. If there's any feedback to be taken, we will contact you and work through those errors together with you. And if all is well, at the end of the line, you're lucky enough to go into step 5, which is the compliance. And at compliance, that means that your solution is formally compliant with the specification, fully following the spec. And the GSMA will grant you with a compliance mark for the specific use case that you've submitted for, as well as, of course, enable you to get access to all the GSMA's marketing assets and leverage the promotion that we make available for you. So all in all, with this service, it is the final step of the suites of assets and developer tooling that we made available in order for the industry to develop meaningful products on the back of the specification. If you would like to know more about this, evidently, reach out to us and we'll be happy to provide you more information and more details about the setup of the service. And with that said, I would like to pass back to Anjos once again as we go into the final parts of this session. I'd like to remind you, if you've got any questions, please do not hesitate to pop them into the chat window.
Thank you, Bart. So thank you for bringing the compliance platform and the importance that is to be compliant with the specification. Again, it's a platform that we can provide more interoperability and help with onboarding and different mobile services, mobile money services. And all these that we have been working, we are doing that to impact lives for those ones who need mobile money services, who needs to access financial services and have that in an easier and much more practical way for the daily activities. So in our projects, we have been impacting over 10 million lives already, which is very grateful to know that we are producing technology here for those who need the most. But also we are doing that to make all the industry to have a community, a platform where all the industry players, they can find the support that they need to work with this innovation and with this kind of technology. So all the projects that we work in our Inclusive Tech Lab with the Mobile Money team, we follow the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So one of the parts in our developer portal, you could see the impact that each use case has on the SDGs. So you have you have an interactive page that clicking over the use case, you see the benefits that it brings in each of the SDGs that is impacting. So this shows the social parameters, social component that we have in our projects. So I would like to invite you just to go over the dev portal and go to this interactive page and try by yourselves and see the impact that using this specification you are providing to your local community, to your society, to your country, which is another important component that you bring in our projects. And just to finalize, I would like to bring the message that all technology that we create in the Mobile Money team, we do that in an open source scenario. So all the tech assets that we make, you see that the documentation is available, but also the code that we create is available. Our repositories are open in the GitHub, and you can have access to the code. You can improve that yourself. You can join our community and contribute to the improvement of all these assets that we are creating here. So to make that, to spread the word, to make that available and spread the word and information about these projects, we are constantly providing, creating events like this one to bring more information and awareness of our API specification, but also more development-oriented events like hackathons or open groups where we can discuss and define the needs, the industry needs, and what kind of what kind of path the specification should follow, and what what kind of technologies or different use cases or new scenarios you could bring inside our specification. And also knowledge sessions where we share parts of this long list of assets that we shared here today, and we do specific sessions about each of those technical solutions. We have available manuals, tutorials, different blogs, reports, documentation in different levels from the business until technical or code documentation of the best practices in different programming languages. That's all available to help your team to provide a better and ideal solution to your market. Again, this is open source under the MIT license. All the solutions are available in our GitHub repositories. Just look for Inclusive Tech Lab, and then you can have access to this code. And we provide free support to our partners. So if you are interested in this specification, we are here to help, and this help is free. So contact us, and we can go from there and help you with testing, deploying, understanding in different levels. Both if you are a developer, you have engineers here to support you, but if you are from the marketing engagement perspective, we also have business players on our side that can help you with this. So again, thank you for the opportunity, and just sending the ball back to you, Bart. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Eudis. And with that said, 53 minutes into the hour, we're closing the presentation part of this webinar, which leaves us a good half hour to take any questions that may come from the audience. We've received a couple of questions so far, so that's a good starting point, but I would really like to invite everyone on the call. If you've got your question, please pop them into the window so we can address them. If that's okay, I'd like to get started with a question raised by Kyle Weston, and maybe I can pose that one to you, Eugis. It's a very straightforward, but also very critical question. As a developer, where do I get started?
That's a very good question, Bart. Thank you. And thank you for posting that, Kyle. Yeah, so if you want to develop, if you have something already started in your API, you can go directly to our test against our simulator. But if you are still starting to create your API and you don't know how to follow the procedures that our specification has, I would recommend you to start by the developers portal and understanding more what kind of the benefits the specification brings, but also understanding which use case we provide support, which one is the ideal for your solution, and so on. If you already have something developed, you can directly go to our Postman collections and test them just using the Postman against our simulator. You can already see the request and response information that you need, that you could test for your system. For these collections, we have available not only the essential parameters of the API, but also the optional ones. So if you have specific requirements of your API that you would like to test in these operational parameters, you can also do. So that's where I would suggest you to start. Thank you, Bart.
Maybe a question related to that coming from Nicolas Brie. Developer communities tend to work together when there is an API available. So is there a specific community environment where developers can come together on the Mobile Money API?
That's a very good question. Yes, we do. We do have. So to evolve this initiative, which is a big initiative about this specification, we have different scenarios and use cases, and the number, it's only increasing. We really need the industry to support us, because we can't go on and define the directions that the market should go without the industry. So we have the working group initiative that any operator or party that is interested into using our API specification, they could join us in this initiative, and not only understand what is going on with the specification and what directions we are going, but they can directly participate into the decisions that we are taking right now about the specification. It's inside this working group that we define the next versions, what kind of use cases, what kind of technologies, languages, platforms, interoperability. So any kind of scenario that is involved or is somehow connected to our specification, we are discussing. So this is a very good question, because I would like also to take this opportunity to invite you to know more about our working groups and how you can onboard with us and contribute with our community. We have a dedicated website for the working groups, that in this community we have forums that are used to support this discussion and to share information about the industry needs and also about the future of the API specification.
Thank you, Eudis. And a question coming from Nathaniel that maybe you've partially already addressed. It's also a development-related question. Still want to raise it. Where can I go to start to implement an API?
Another good question. Thank you, Nathaniel. So yes, that's a fair point. So I really like this solution. You guys are talking about API specification, creating new APIs. Okay, great. I want to create my API. What should I do now? So I would suggest, as a first step, you to understand what kind of services you want to provide, what kind of financial services you want to create. Once you understand that, so you can relate with the different use cases and scenarios that we have. But to implement your API, you can use any platform as your preference. But to test it, you can do that against our simulator. And then it's where you can use the Postman collections that we have. We can, when you evolve a little bit more in terms of service, you can use our compliance platform. You can directly via terminal test your API against our simulator as well. So you have different platforms that you can do that. But to create the code yourself, you can just use any platform or IDE environment of your preference.
Another great question. Of course, when people build solutions, they're interested in specific type of areas, business areas. So that relates to the type of use cases you're interested in. And there is a question coming from Vitalis, which is, are there existing use cases you can provide as an example?
Yes. Thank you again for another good question. So yeah, we have 8 use cases available right now. If you go to our developer portal, you can see lots of information about these use cases for many different levels. So if you would like an example, like how these use cases are part of the daily activities in the mobile money scenario markets, you can get there some examples. But also, if you want to see that under an API perspective, you can also have access to different flow diagrams that shows for those specific use cases or specific user stories inside the use case, how the information flows, goes from one entity to another, and what kind of data you are passing through when you are using your API solution. So I would invite you to get access to this information in our developers portal that I think that the link was shared already in the chat.
Thank you, Eudis. And we've received a question from Virgile, which is more on the business aspect of building API propositions. Who will actually manage the business model part of the GSMA API? And maybe I can take a shot to answer that question as well. Because, of course, in the introduction to this webinar, we presented that providing API-based propositions also allows mobile money providers and the industry to monetize on those propositions and build new revenue streams. Evidently, as GSMA, we provide this specification and we support adopters of the specification. By that moment onwards, if the implementation is there, those providers may provide those commercially to the industry, to their own partners. So it is, of course, up to providers themselves to define the business setup and the pricing structures and so on how to do that and on what conditions to do that. So typically, if you look for a solution, an API provider that is compliant with the GSMA spec, look up how they actually offer that and package that to the market, and look up what their commercial model looks like. As the GSMA, we are working with providers more in the research and business area to support providers on how they can tap into the opportunities and what that type of business model could look like, based on the expertise that we have in-house and what we know from propositions from around the globe that we can bring from one market to another in support of GSMA members. But ultimately, if you connect to a commercial solution, it is up to the provider of that solution to inform you about the commercial models behind it. Moving on to a question by Amin, which has a regional focus. Can I please know if you also cover companies in MENA, in Middle East and Northern Africa? As GSMA, we keep a track of course, which companies are building against this specification and have their solutions out there, and if so, what use cases are out there. So we have that information available. I would like to start by saying that, of course, the specification is publicly available on a global range. So we can confirm hereby that there is adopters from all continents where lower middle income countries are located, meaning in Africa, in Asia, South and Southeast Asia, as well as Latin America. So from all continents, we've got adopters and collaborators with the GSMA. Whether we have specific adopters in the markets of your interest, please do reach out to us so we can give you a more tailored answer to that. We are definitely also working in answer to Amin's question with providers from Middle East and Northern Africa, where possible for sure, and in concrete examples as well. A final question so far, and again, if you've got any further questions, do not hesitate, don't be shy, pop them into the box. But a final question on the list so far coming from Latif. If you are just a third-party service provider looking to integrate with a mobile money service, how does the specification help you? Is there a compliance channel for those integrating MoMo services in their applications? Eudisley, is that a question that you would like to take a first shot at?
Yes, I can try. I think that there are multiple questions inside that form. So the first one is how we can support this integration. So the first thing that you need to check is if the API that you want to use to make your financial services available is compliant with our specification. So if this API is compliant, then if your solution is also compliant, as Bart mentioned before, this kind of interoperability is one of the main skills that this specification brings. So it will be easier for you to do this integration. Also, there is one good thing about having a specification to help you with the mobile money scenario, the market, is that to evolve this specification, we need the industry. So even if a specific API, like the MoMo API that you mentioned, is not fully compliant with one of the use cases, but a good amount of the different APIs that the MoMo solution or the solutions they bring, they will be related inside our specification. So again, if you are providing solutions that are following the specification, it will be easier to do this kind of integration. And again, we can help you to support that also. We can help you to check what kind of endpoints inside the API that you are creating for your services we can find, or we can correlate with the other ones in other solutions available. I hope that it answers lots of information inside the question.
Thank you, Eudisley. And we received another question from LinkedIn user. How can I start to use the compliance service for my API? And I'm assuming there that my API also implies that you're providing an API to your customers, rather than consuming or connecting to someone else's API. If you're offering your own API and you would like to see that it's compliant with the GSMA specification, if you've implemented according to the spec, I think the first step to take is that you can make use of the tooling that Eugis also presented, in specific the simulator and also the test mode of the compliance platform that we've outlined. So that really allows you to play and validate that your implementation is according to the specification. In a way you prefer, as in your timelines, your scope, you can build it the way you'd like to be done in terms of testing your solution. Once you're ready to really say, okay, I believe that I am now compliant, that's the moment I would recommend to contact the GSMA. And that's the moment we take in your application, and as I presented a little while ago, the moment also we scope out your application in terms of the questionnaire that you would be asked to fill out. And that questionnaire, your answers to that questionnaire, which basically represents the type of API and the scope that you've built, will define the cycle of the compliance service for your specific case. And from that moment, we take it onwards. You can still continue to test. You can go into compliance mode and file your official submission. GSMA can then validate your implementation, and if that is all successful, you will be granted the compliance mark. So I hope that clarifies a little bit how you can start using the compliance service. A question by Francis just came in. How do you approach big mobile money providers to adopt GSMA specs? Their solutions are already on the market, and we know how costly it might be for them to change the solution. Eugis, is that a question you would like to get started on? I can also take it.
Yes, I can start, and probably you complement something, because that is a very important question, right? So you have operators already in place with their solutions, their API, and what is the advantage, or that would be, it has a technical debt. There is a cost in changing that to the specification. So why should I do that? So the first thing is bringing back the words interoperability, community, onboarding that we want to provide to this specification. So right now, if a play has its own API, it needs to evolve alone in the market and evolves the API by itself, by a team, while we are with the entire community of mobile money operators and service providers and financial services providers providing this evolution. So that is one positive point. Maybe there is a cost initially to do some small changes, but this comes with benefits in a long term because of the support that you get from GSMA. So that's the first point. The second one is that this API specification, it evolved together with the industry already. So when you think that it's too much to change into your API, but it's really good to check how much is this change. Do you really need to change all the use cases at once? You can just be compliant with one specific use case initially, not all of them. And I would invite you to do this comparison, because I think that you realize that what you need to change is not as much as you imagine, exactly because we evolved with the industry. We try to create a specification that complies the ideas of the initial APIs that were already set in the market, in the mobile money market, when we started to create this specification.
I think
Yeah, so I actually really appreciate this question, and I like it a lot. And it also shows that Francis has a very strong understanding of the complexity in the mobile money industry. That is, of course, a very fair statement. And as we started out at the beginning of this webinar, is that the GSMA Mobile Money API initiative is an initiative in collaboration between the mobile money industry and the GSMA. So it's really critical for the industry to come together and define the future of the specification itself, and also define how to work together on the existing versions of it and in terms of how to adopt it. So it's very fair, of course, if mobile money providers have their own APIs, they have their own business considerations, how to put their implementation next to the GSMA specification. And there's all sorts of directions that type of dialogue can go. But we're always very keen on working together with the industry and hearing the different viewpoints, and also see how this initiative can support providers that already have their implementation and bring solutions further together. The GSMA is here to support the industry, and we're very keen to have the dialogue with players and work towards mutually beneficial solutions for all. At this moment in time, when it comes to having traction and collaboration in the industry, we're at least very pleased to say that many of the leading mobile money providers from around Africa, Asia, and Latin America are actively part of this initiative and contributing to the scope of it. Juliana just popped in another question into the window. Actually, it's a remark. I was a bit too quick. This could be a key in finding leverage in this market. I think I would like to raise, because I think we've reached the end of the questions that have so far been popped up in the chat window. If there's any final questions, please do make them known, then we can still take them into account. And if not, I think from our side, we would like to start moving towards conclusion of this webinar. We very much hope that this was insightful, that it was a good introduction into the GSMA specification and all the assets in the suite of developer tooling and products and services available around it that we offer, develop jointly with the industry, and offer to adopters in the industry. Really giving you a first introduction into how this initiative can indeed help unlock technology in financial services. If you've got any further questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We'll be very happy to be in contact with you. That's definitely part of this initiative, to have warm relationships with players so we know what's playing and we can accommodate the needs. So please do reach out to us if you would like to be in further contact. We'll be looking forward to your communication. With that said, I would like to thank you all very much for your attention. We hope it's been insightful. And Eugis, any final words from you?
I just would like to thanks to all the amazing questions that you made here, and let you know that I'm available. You can reach me through email, but also go to the Inclusive Tech Lab page. There you have all other projects that we have. I would also invite you to know a little bit more about the different work streams that we have. Besides this API, we have biometrics projects, tokenization, gender inclusion projects that would be good for you to also be aware and see how we can support you to bring innovation to your solutions in mobile money, in the mobile money industry. Thank you. Thank you, Bart. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Eugis. Thank you, everyone, for being on the line. We hope you appreciated this webinar, and we'll be very much looking forward to being in contact with you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.